afternoon, Defense Secretary James Mattis affirming his commitment to NATO on his first full day in office. Mattis calling the alliance's Secretary General and the Defense Secretaries of both Britain and Canada to assure them that the United States' commitment is strong to NATO. Joining me right now is Fox News military analyst General Jack Keane. General, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good being here, Maria.
Well, you know, I mean, Trump has openly criticized NATO, right? He called it obsolete. Then you've got his defense secretary supporting the partnership. What's your take here?
Well, first of all, I think one of the most important things that a new government, when it takes over, particularly in an open democracy like the United States, is that we reassure our allies. And, you know, in the inauguration speech, President Trump said much the same. About our allies, that he was going to support them. You're absolutely correct. He did criticize NATO. Two things. One was the fact that not everybody is paying their fair share in terms of defense spending. That is a valid criticism. And number two, he criticized them for being obsolete. I don't think I would have gone that far, but that criticism was waged simply because NATO was not engaged against ISIS. And I believe that's a serious flaw. They have since corrected that. They are moving in that direction. So I really believe what's happening here is General Mattis, acting as Secretary of Defense, with White House approval, is reassuring our allies that NATO still matters to us. It is the most important political and military alliance that we're engaged in. And, you know, it's pretty interesting, Maria. The only time that NATO has ever gone to war because of Article 5, where one country has been attacked, and then they consider it to be an attack on one as an attack on all, is when the United States was attacked on 9/11 and NATO went to war in Afghanistan. NATO, I believe, will continue to receive U.S. support and also criticism from the United States, which is valid.
So, but are we supportive, and is the alliance supportive enough to its members? I mean, this all came up after we saw all of the, for example, terrorism that went on in France, to hit France, and other areas and members that the U.S. felt were not being protected.
Yeah, one of the problems we have is the EU is sharing intelligence, which is essentially a political and economic union, as we're very much aware of. But NATO was not sharing intelligence, even though they have intelligence apparatus, because they're essentially a military function. That is changing. And it shouldn't have needed prodding from the president-elect to do something like that. But they're moving in that direction. Yes, is NATO slow, cumbersome? Yes, they certainly are. But listen, NATO is absolutely vital to security in Europe and U.S. interests. Russian aggression is truly on the march. If we didn't have a NATO, Maria, we'd have to invent one now. Yeah. Because we need an alliance, a transatlantic alliance, the United States and our European nations together. Improvement, yes. And I think President Trump is going to have some impact on improving NATO.
This is a really important point that you're making, because Russia is on the march, and it feels like the whole world is watching what Russia is doing next.